Okay, welcome to this tutorial. It's the first I'll be doing, and I'm hoping to be doing them daily from now on. I'm just going to go ahead and make Blender full screen. Okay, so what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be making a fan. Just gone ahead and deleted that default cube. And we're going to be doing this with some interesting modifiers. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in a circle. Yeah, and then I'm going to extrude it out and scale it in. You might not see what this is for right now, but I assure you, you will. So now I'm going to go into side view in object mode, press 5 to toggle into orthographic view, and just go ahead and center that right around the center point of the 3D viewport and go back into top view. Just nudge that over so it is kind of in the center. I'm going to tab in and I'm going to add some loop cuts. Now I'm going to go into wireframe mode, C to brush select, and I'm going to tick on proportional editing, and I'm just going to rotate these round. Now for our table fan, this is going to be the main mesh cage, if you were, of the fan itself. Then in side view, I'm just going to go ahead and change this to a spherical fall off, and I'm just going to move it up a little to there. So we can see it's just about the right shape for a fan. I might try getting these and kind of making it a little bit more edgy around the edge, so the fan blades have time to move, or space to move rather. Time? Why was I saying time? I might select it all and smooth it out a couple of times. That's better. So I'm going to tab in to edit mode, sorry. I don't know why I just tabbed out, but I did. And I'm going to scale this up. I need to scale it right up. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to be using the Skin Modifier, and at the moment the Skin Modifier seems to have a little bit of a bug where if you're using a lot of vertices on the initial input of the Skin Modifier, and then you use the Control A method to adjust the radius value, it kind of bugs up Blender and crashes it, and I just tried to do this tutorial and got a complete crash with doing that. But this is a method that has worked as a workaround to that, so yeah, I'm going to go ahead now and add in the new Skin Modifier, and it's going to take a second to calculate this, so bear with me please. I'm just going to go ahead now Okay, here we go. So we can see what this has done is what I probably should have done first is, and I'm just going to make this not editable and not viewable, is just for safety I should have deleted only faces to leave us with this. And I'm just going to scale this out a little bit more. And we can see when we turn on visible, and tab out into object mode, again, this is going to take a second because it has to calculate it again, unfortunately. Here we go, and I'm happy with that for the basis of our fan mesh. I like it. It's not perfect, but we go into perspective mode. It's not really letting me toggle that right now. I'm just going to go ahead and apply this, because that might clean up some problems we're having. And what I'm doing when I'm clicking apply with any modifier is I'm going ahead and the modifier makes certain adjustments to the mesh based on inputs and outputs, and when you click apply, what you're doing is you're telling it to make those into what the actual mesh is. Again, I'm probably explaining that badly, and this is my first tutorial, so yeah, I apologize for things I lack in. Okay, that's done. So if we tab in now, we have this quite accurate mesh. I mean, it's probably not as efficient as it could be, because if we'd have gone ahead and modeled this by hand, we probably wouldn't have it including loop cuts around these joints here, and this probably wouldn't be an end, or this probably wouldn't have multiple faces here. We probably would have gone ahead, and if I just go into the grease pencil, we would have probably modeled this so that these were lines here. Pardon me, terrible burp, I will have to cut that out. Yes, if we were doing, if we were modeling this by hand, we probably would have an edge flow more like that, so there was a quad here, and maybe not a multiple-sided face. But for only a couple of minutes work, it gives us quite a good cage mesh, and I like it. So I'm going to go ahead now and scale this down and move into front view. I'm going to go to side view and rotate it minus 90 degrees. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put onto this a subsurf modifier just to smooth it out and make it look a bit more like we're dealing with wire and not just stuff. And then I'm going to go ahead and set that smooth. And then I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to go Control M to mirror along the y-axis, and then just drag it so it's roughly there. Now if we go into perspective mode, we have quite a nice looking cage for our fan. Now what we want to do is we want to go into side view and go back into orthographic view, which is 5 on the keyboard to toggle in and out of orthographic and perspective view. Really useful, you should use it all the time. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to click here and I'm just going to go, no I'm not, scratch that, I'm just going to click my 3D cursor there. I was going to do a cursor selection, but then I remembered I can't spell cursor. I'm very sorry for that. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to add in a cylinder and rotate it 90 degrees. Then we're going to scale it down a little bit, and this is going to form the central shaft of our fan. So we're going to just move it so it's roughly in the center of this assembly. And then we're going to go over into front view and move it again so it's roughly in the center of this cage that we've got here. Now we're just going to go in and Z to go into wireframe, 3 to go to our side view, and then I'm going to tab into edit mode, and then I'm just going to scale this along the Y axis. And I have proportional editing enabled at the moment. That might cause problems, so I'm going to go ahead and disable that. So again, scaling it out along the Y axis. I'm just going to tab out. I don't know why I have this habit of tabbing in and out of edit mode quite a lot when I model. I don't know why that is. It's really just force of habit. So now I'm going to extrude this along the shift Y axis, which basically allows you to scale it on everything but the Y axis. So that's S shift Y. I'm just going to scale this. Sorry, let me start that again. I'm going to E to extrude, click out of extrusion, and then I'm going to go scale shift Y to scale it on everything but the Y axis. And just bring it up and then extrude it again to there. And that's just going to give us a nice little front plate thingy. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to make it conical, give it a conical shape, and I'm just going to, you see this in kind of old fans, they sometimes have a point there. More modern ones, sort of just around this area, they tend to be flat like that, but I want to go for a more old look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my grease pencil and I'm just going to draw a rough, that's kind of the shape we want. So I'm just going to go extrude, drag it out, scale it down, make an extrusion, out, scale it down, bring that back a little bit, extrude it, scale it down, drag it out. Doesn't really much matter which way around you do those things. Down. And that should go ahead, and if we tab out and go into smooth shading, that smooths out quite nicely. There, I'm liking the way that's looking, but I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to add modifier. I'm just going to go ahead and add an edge split to this, just so it's a bit clean around the edges. I like that. And then I'm going to go over to this face here. This is another thing in more recent Blender versions that wasn't there in older Blender versions. The default for a cone coming in, or a cone or a cylinder now coming in, is not a triangle fan at the end, but it is in fact an end gong. It's not a big difference, but it does make a difference. Most notably, it makes selecting the end of one of these kind of primitives much easier. So I'm just going to go and into side view and extrude that out, scale it out a bit, scale it out a bit more, and extrude it over to here. So that makes kind of the back of our fan. I'm just going to add a loop cut here, and Z for wireframe. I'm going to border select these, and then I'm going to go extrude, S, Shift Y, and just do that, and that's just going to make us a little back-facing thing for our fan. Leave us with this here in the middle, so we can just go ahead and extrude that in a bit. And do some things that kind of try and make the design look a little fun here. Drag those back a little bit more. Maybe scale it down, give it a bit of a conical shape at the back as well. Then I might just add a subsurf to this. And move the edge split after the subsurf. And then I might click these and then Control E to mark sharp. Or is that mark sharp? No, it's not mark sharp. Sorry, I'm being a complete idiot. As per usual. A really cool feature of Subsurf, which isn't used much, but I'd just like to discuss here, is apply modifier to editing cage. And this just allows us, none of our verts are hidden in this mode, and they kind of shrink wrap to the subsurfed model. So again, Shift E to edge crease, and just Alt click to select edge loop, and then again Shift E to edge crease, maybe move that back a little bit. Liking the way that looks, but we need to just go in ahead, and I'm going to change into face selection mode to just again Shift E to mark that. And I might go ahead and Alt click Shift E. Just going ahead and sharpening some things in here up a bit. And I'm going to go ahead and top view 5. C to brush select. I'm just going to select some of these edges in here. Middle mouse button to deselect. And then, no, I'm going to go into face mode and just select these like that. Middle to deselect. And I'm going to make an extrusion here. And scale this in Don't know why that didn't exactly scale in properly there, but it didn't. I'm just going to make kind of just a finny kind of thing coming up here. Again, this probably isn't the model with the best edge flow in the world, but it's going to work, which is all you can really ask for. Well, no, you can ask for a model that's you know, perfect in every way, but let's be honest, that's not likely to happen so easily. It's definitely not going to happen in the time I have to create this tutorial. So I'm going to go into side view now, and what I want to do is this. I like the way that the extrusion worked on the front here, but not so much on the back. So I'm going to scale on the Y, that line of verts, and I'm going to go 0. And I'm going to scale them on the Z axis to 0 as well, just to make sure they're right. And then I'm just going to move them out like this to create this kind of shape at the back. Again, we can only really do these kind of morphological things, if that's the correct term, to this mesh, because in this way, because we have this enabled here, it would be harder if they weren't stuck to it, because if I just go ahead and disable the subsurf view, our output in as this with just a mesh is quite different to that of the subsurfed mesh. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give this a couple of subsurfs, turn that back on, and go in. What I might do is I might just grab these 3 faces and drag them up a little, and then go and drag these 2 verts and bring them out and down a little. Tab out. And I might want to go all and just smooth it off one. I like that, but I need to make an edge crease here and an edge crease on this row here and that one there, just to give it that machined look. That I'm after. Okay, so now we've got, this has got quite a good look to our fan here. So I'm going to go ahead and go here and tick into Cycles Rendering Engine, press 5, and I'm just going to go over into Rendered View, just to get an idea of how this is all going to work in the rendering pipeline. This is a good thing, I think, to do when you're working every now and then, especially if you're working with the Cycles engine, is just to tick over into Rendered View and just give it 2 or 3 passes on the sampling, just to, and you can just press Z to go ahead and come out of that. So I'm just going to go over into side view, and I'm going to add, I'm just going to get rid of that grease pencil layer I just put in earlier, and I'm going to go in and add a cylinder. and this is going to make up the shaft, if you will, that our fan is going to be sitting on. I can't say this model is actually turning out quite as well as the one that I had done beforehand, but you know, that's just the way creativity is, I suppose. Life would be very, very boring if you took the same route every time you created something. And I think that would, I mean, if you used the same tool every time you created something, I feel that that would lead to a blandness. Or not the same tool, but the same method, it would lead to a blandness in your work. So I'm very much advocating trying something different every time you make something. So I'm just adding a loop cut here and just scale that up to make a base for what we're doing. I'm going to add a loop cut, bring that down, scale it up, and that's just going to make the bottom rim there. And then, not quite sure how this is going to work, because that's looking a little bit too primitive. So I might just bring that in, scale it down a little bit, and I might add a loop cut there, and I might add a loop cut here, and I might just make the semblances of a little mechanism here by making it go kind of straight and kind of up a little bit again. Maybe you could put in another loop cut there, bring it down in a little bit, put in another loop cut, bring it up to create maybe a little rim there. Again, I'm probably not the best person at looking at how something would actually be used in real life. I think I made a bit of a mistake up here because I didn't choose something here that was centered, so I'm just going to go ahead and rotate it a little bit and try and make it a little bit more symmetrical. Though I'm not sure that I am happy with this whole area here. Maybe I'll change it later. Maybe I'll keep it how it is. Who knows? Not me. So I'm just going to go ahead and smooth that out and add modifier edge split. That's going to go ahead and make all our edges nice and sharp. Edge split's possibly one of the best modifiers out there. You know, I would use it much more than I would a lot of the other modifiers we have here. I mean, I don't often use the screw or the build modifier. My modifiers of choice would probably be Solidify. I think Skin's going to be a good one that I'll be incorporating into my workflow once 264 is out there and stable. Edge split and Boolean. Those are the modifiers that I probably work with on a daily basis and enjoy muchly. Yeah, I'm probably not doing a good job at this tutorial. I'm rambling a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and go out into perspective view, have another look at that. I'm quite happy with that, but I would just like to add some blades now to this, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to add a plane, go 3, rotate 90, I'm going to bring that in, 1 to go into our front view, and then I'm just going to scale this along the x-axis so it's roughly where I would want a blade to be. Bring those down a little bit, bring it over a bit, get a tab in here, add some loop cuts. This is probably the only technique now that was in the original tutorial that I watched that gave me the idea to do this, that I am actually using, is this little method here, and I thought this was great. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to add maybe stray vert. I'm just going to give that a bit of a bulge there. Maybe just a little. That kind of bulge I think is nice. Move in a little bit here. Maybe make it a little thinner at the top. Just doing that with just really simply the scale multiplier. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just click this vert here, and I'm going to go into my top view, and with proportional editing enabled I'm just going to rotate and scale up and keep scaling up till I think a lot of it is in the influence. I'm just going to rotate round. All that's going to do is give us this nice kind of fan blade to work with. And then if we go and add a Solidify Modifier, which is another one that I really like, a big fan of Solidify, it does wonders when you're doing architectural stuff. And just give it a bit of thickness, put in a Subdivision Surface, 2 views there. And I'm liking the way that's looking, but I just want to move the subsurf up so it gives kind of a harsher edge to the blade. I'm going to go ahead and apply that. No, I'm not going to apply them. First, what I'm going to do is tab in Z. I'm just going to go and try and get the very center point of our assembly here. And if my modeling had been a bit cleaner, that would have been the center point of the scene, and I could just align my cursor to center. But no one's perfect, are they? So I'm just going to click there to make a selection there, and then I'm going to scale out, press A to select all. I'm just going to shunt it over a little bit. I'm going to get rid of proportional editing now, because it will not help us anymore. Now, I'm going to go Shift D to duplicate, and then I'm going to rotate it 120 degrees. And we see that didn't work. The reason that didn't work is we don't want to rotate around the center point. We want to rotate around the 3D cursor, which is why I just went in and set it up. So now we're going to go rotate 120 and Shift D, rotate 120. And this has gone and given us some nice blades here. But I'm just going to take these edges of these and I'm just going to select furthest along those edges and go 1, and I just want to go extrude them and scale them in a little. Just a little. Wait, no. And we want to change up back to medium point. And then just scale those in a little. So they kind of get to there. And to me, these blades are looking a little bit... They demonstrate the process, but I really wouldn't want to send anything out with these in them. But we're going to go in and add a cylinder. And wait, Control Z. No, we're not. We're going to tab out and we're going to apply these because they're not perfect. I wouldn't use them. Really, I don't think that they're production ready, if you were, but I don't think tutorials should be there to make things that are perfect. They should be there to teach people. So, yeah, and of course be entertaining. I hope I'm entertaining. I'm probably not, but I hope so anyway. So we've got this here, and I'm just going to drag this whole thing back so it's around the center. So here we have something forming up that looks a little bit like a fan. Again, it's not perfect, but what in life is, eh? So I'm just going to go ahead and take over into rendered view again to have a look at just what this is doing. So I'm going to do one last bit of modeling and then we're going to go into creating some textures and the stuff to go in onto this. I should do some cleanup here, set that smooth, give it an edge split. And then I'm just going to go medium, wait, no, 3D cursor, and I'm just going to test this mechanism here by rotating them around the 3D cursor. And this bin, I think that's animatable. Yeah, they're definitely spinning there. If we rotate them around that point there, which we can always go ahead and find again. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add in a curve around the bottom here. And this is just going to form kind of a cable going out somewhere. You're going to have it going out the base there. And I'm just going to add a circle. I'm going to give this circle a name. I have really bad workspace cleanliness and I tend to not name everything, but the things I use I always name. All the things I need to use in as modifying objects I name because that makes them easier to find, but if, say, the base of the stand, I'm not going to use that so much, so I don't bother naming it. It's not good. But I'm just going to go curve profile for this circle I just made. And what this is going to do is this is just going to give us, if we scale this down a bit, and we go to here, and if we go into object data, and in here we should have, where has it gone? No, not our object, our curve menu. I'm going to go bevel object to curve profile, and then scale that circle down a little bit, and that just makes a cable. So if we tab into edit mode here, and we just give this some extrusions, we can make kind of a cable going off somewhere, going and doing its own thing. I'm just going to go ahead and move that to layer 2 because we're not using it, and if it's in the way we can move it and do things. Oh yeah, to move something to a layer, by the way, is M and then the number of the layer on your keypad, so say 2 to move something to 2, and then if I go over to 2 by hitting 2 on the keyboard, and then I can move back over to 1 to go back to 1. Okay, right now I'm going to look at making some materials and lighting for this. Materials and lighting are fun. What I just want to do is I want to add in, and this is a method I use quite a lot, it's a method I find useful. I'm going to add mesh cube, scale the cube up, 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 and then Z to wireframe. Now, there's something kind of useful we can do with this cube when we're looking at a cycles render, because it's my feeling that cycles renders don't work very well when you have the backdrop there. I can't really say why, mostly it's just they don't work well. I can't say, it's probably because in cycles, because the rendering engine is so ray tracing friendly, so to speak, and there's nothing almost with just flat surfaces. In the old rendering engine, things that were very flat surfaces tended to be quite flat and inanimate, but with cycles, things like ambient occlusion and the distances things are from each other tend to play a much, much, much bigger part in the way the rendering engine actually works. Having nothing there seems to make a problem. I don't know if I'm describing that right, but that's just how I feel it is. So what I do is I add a cube for a simple scene, and then these two faces here, I select and I press P to separate, and I just separate selection. Then I'm just going to go ahead and move that over to 3, because I'm not using it now, but I will use it later. And then I'm going to go and add a subdivision surface to what's left. This thing here, don't know what I did there, but that's just going to give us this kind of simple scene. Tab in edge select mode, and I'm just going to select these, Shift E, and just kind of sharpen out every edge but these two, which leaves us with the scene that if we set smooth and add another iteration of subsurf and an edge split, gives us this little set to work with. And if we just go into 1, 3, 5, Z, 5, move it up a little bit more. It gives us something good to work with. So when we go ahead and view rendered, I'm going to be rendering this from the front view. We view this rendered. It gives us this nice sort of set to work with, which I find useful. The extra faces add a little bit more grain, but I think that it's better to have the grain than to have the nothing, because the nothing creates more problems than the grain. And all the grain and cycles can be gotten rid of with a little bit of render time. So I'm just going to go back into wireframe mode. Now, for the whole of this, I'm just going to select one of these, and I'm going to go to Materials View, New Material, and I'm just going to go ahead and name this Metal. And I'm going to make this a glossy material, GGX, and then I'm going to go around 0.4 for the roughness, and the color is going to be a grey. I'm just going to add the same material to everything. Apart from this, which I'm just going to name that plastic, and I'm just going to create that as a black diffuse material. There we go. I'm kind of closing up to my hour's time here. I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing. I'm just going to give that a render. And I'm not sure how I like that. Thinking that the darkness I'm seeing here is because I need to first select this backdrop and give it a nice white shading there. And I'm going to go back into wireframe mode. And I'm going to go over to 3 to get this. Then I'm going to move that to 1. Then press 1. 5 to go into here. And I'm going to give this a subsurf. what it does is, before I made that kind of cube and separated the pieces off, and what I find that is really, really good for is just making kind of a box where the lighting is all uniform, and just so we know where everything is, we know where everything's going, so that when we place our viewport over here to render, we just know kind of what's going on. So we're going to go give this second piece of that box a material, and we're going to make this an emission, and I'm just going to give this a slightly orangey tint there, and we're going to see how this looks in render view. Try and give it a second or so to eliminate some of the grain. I'm liking how that's looking, but I'm thinking that perhaps the material could be lighter and a bit sharper. Yeah, looking at this, I'm not sure whether I like quite what this is doing. And I think that what would actually help this right now is if we moved over here, made that black, and made this white, and then had another look. Just going to change this here to a Beckman and see how that works. Better, but again, we're just not getting the gloss that I'm looking for on the main mesh here. It just looks a bit flat and ugly. Moving that down to 1. Just manually going in at 0.1 there. Maybe I'm just going to left click on there and just to separate off the materials and make that one a little bit different, just to give it a bit of a variance. part of the reason that this is a bit flat here is because there's nothing to reflect. So I'm going to go ahead and go out here, and I'm just going to add in a plane, and then I'm going to rotate it along the y-axis by 90 degrees. Bring it here, Z, scale it up. Oops. Push that back to active element. Just going to add a second light to the scene. So what these emissions, by the way, are their lights, and this is how we generally do lighting in cycles. Is by setting up these planes. I'm going to go new emission, and I'm going to give it a bluish kind of hue to it. So we've got some variance in the light that's being used in the scene. Click that, and it's white. Let's go back into rendered view and see how that looks. Just going to go ahead and duplicate that and then grab it on the y-axis. Grab it on the x-axis rather, and move it over here. This is one of the great things about cycles, I'm much happier with this. This is looking a lot nicer. So I'm just going to select these, go into Object View, and then we can go over into Ray Visibility, and we can make these here not visible to the camera. But just because they're not visible doesn't mean the light they're emitting isn't visible. So what we're doing when we're just deselecting camera here is we're just moving the actual mesh out of the render pipeline, and we're allowing it to what's the right word? I don't think there is a word for what I want to say, so what it's doing when you're deselecting that is you're just moving the plane out of the render pipeline so that everything else that is applied to that material is affecting the scene, but it's not directly being rendered itself. You see, we want things such as the transmission and the shadow to carry on, but we don't want the blindingness of them being in the scene. So yeah, that's just about what we want. Now in the second tutorial in this series, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at weathering this object so it looks as though it's actually old. Because right now we have this base that looks like it's new. In the next tutorial, we're going to look at weathering this so that it's old.